Welcome to another episode. I am so excited to have Dr. Evan Imber Black with us today and so honored for her choosing and deciding and agreeing to join us today in this conversation on how to do rituals for life to create a refresh in your relationship, in your life, in your family, whatever you might need as you start a new season, and just in general to make your life more rich and to even have healing properties. So that's why we have Dr. Ember Black with us to enlighten us on how to use rituals during specific times in our life to really create healthy family bonds and a rich life with each other. So, without further ado, I am going to read her bio and then I'll say hello to Dr. Evan Imber Black. So, she is the program director of the Marriage and Family Therapy Program at Mercy University. Dr. Imber Black was the editor of Family Process from 2004 to 2011, a major scholarly journal in family systems research and family therapy. She founded and directed the Center of Family Studies and Health at the Ackerman Institute for the Family in New York City, where she's affiliated as a senior faculty. She was also a professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx, where she founded and directed the Urban Institute for Families and Family Therapy Training. Dr. Evan Imber Black was a past president of the American Family Therapy Academy. And throughout her internationally recognized career, she has made a major contribution to thematic themes in the field with models for practice, including families and larger systems, family rituals, and family secrets. She's the author of over 80 original papers and several books and has received major awards for her contributions. So I am so honored to have her here with me today. Hello, Evan. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you, Emma, for that lovely introduction.
My pleasure. So, why don't we get started and tell us a little bit about how you chose this magnificent field to be a therapist, to contribute, and tell us a little bit about how your career kind of
Yeah,
progressed.
sure. My first job out of college at age 20 was as a high school teacher in in Chicago, on the West Side, and I did that for 4 years, and then I moved to California. I moved with my then husband, and we had two children, and then our marriage fell apart,
Hmm.
as many do. And I was looking for what to do, and there was a wonderful program at Cal State Hayward University in psychotherapy, master's level.
Hmm.
And so I started with that. I got very interested in working with families in particular, rather than just individuals. Couples therapy had really not become its own separate field at that time.
Hmm.
And I finished my master's and got a scholarship for my doctorate at the University of Pittsburgh. So we picked up and moved cross country,
Nice.
and I did my doctorate at the University of Pittsburgh, where I really focused. It was a program where you could very much choose your own focus, which was wonderful.
Mm,
A PhD program, and I focused on family systems.
nice.
And then I got my first faculty job at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where I taught family therapy. Um, I remained there for a period of time, for 5 years, 5 years, but they were not about to hire another person in family therapy, and I just felt that I would not grow if I stayed in a place where I was the only faculty member.
Mm,
So I was offered and took a job in Carl Tom's program in Calgary, Alberta. So we picked up again and moved again, cross country and country to country. And I stayed there for 4 years. It was quite wonderful. I was the training director there for 4 years. And I met Lascelles Black, who became my husband. And we both really wanted to leave Calgary. It was about time. And we moved to New York City. And we stayed in New York until a couple of years ago. Sadly, my husband passed away,
Yes,
and
condolences.
I decided to move up to Connecticut. But during all that time, let's see, I'm trying to think from 2006 to the present. I have been the program director at Mercy University in the master's program in marriage and family therapy. That program, like all MFT masters in New York, was agreed upon by the state of New York licensing board in 2006. And we were one of the first programs, and I've been there ever since.
And wonderful. And you turned out beautiful students from there. I had the pleasure of supervising a few and have
Oh,
been in my
thank you.
practice.
That's good to
Yes,
hear.
yes.
That's very good to hear. I love it there. We do have wonderful students.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, if any of your listeners are interested in pursuing a master's in MFT, give us a shout.
Lovely. I love that. Yes, totally. Would totally encourage that.
And then
And
I do a small private practice. Uh,
where do
yeah,
you practice?
from my home,
Hmm.
from my home in Farmington, Connecticut. Some of it's virtual, most of it's virtual. People seem to like that a lot today. And so, yeah,
Yep, yep. Very good. Lovely. So you are known for your work with family secrets and with family rituals, as among other things. But those are you have a few books in those topics. And I wanted to focus today on rituals as with spring is around the corner and we have all the holidays coming up. And I figured what a beautiful time to talk about rituals and how to do them properly and the benefits of rituals. So, anything that you want to start with in terms of teaching or showing us why rituals are important?
sure.
So, let's
Well,
start there.
um, and let me just give a little background.
Yeah.
I started the interest in rituals at the University of Massachusetts, so it's a long time ago. My then graduate student, Janine Roberts and Dick Whiting, who were PhD students, um, worked with me, and we did an edited book called Rituals in Families and Family Therapy.
Hmm.
It's still available. It's in a second edition. It's probably a little dated, I would think. But then I wrote a popular book called Rituals for Our Times, and I did that one myself. It's a book for professionals and for an educated lay public. So your listeners can use it with their clients, and it really lays out everything that you need to know about family rituals and cultural rituals, which are also very important.
Yes, yes. So this I actually base a lot of my work with rituals when I speak about rituals with my clients from this book. And also you had a nice chapter in family transitions, I believe was called the book. By Monica McGoldrick.
Yes,
So yeah, so a few sources. So I'm familiar with some of the work and I definitely weave that in. So I want to enlighten the rest of our clients, whether they're professionals or lay people about how to do rituals and why they're meaningful. Like, what is the significance and the importance of having rituals?
yeah. Well, maybe if you wouldn't mind, first let me just sort of go through for people the kinds of rituals,
Sure.
so that
Perfect.
everybody knows where you can find rituals. They're everywhere. The first, beginning with daily rituals, the things that people do that are different from just mere um, interactions. not mere, but I mean, they are invested with meaning. So something like a family meal, whether that's in the morning, if the family is eating breakfast together, or more likely in the evening for supper time.
Mhm.
That's a good example of a daily ritual. It happens every day or almost every day, and it has to it special meaning. When you ask adults to tell me about what mealtime was like when you were a kid, and you'll hear what were the repeating interactions that happened,
Mm,
what were the symbols, and that's something very important, I think, for us all to think about. Rituals have symbols. They have aspects to them that are rich with meaning. So if we take something like a daily ritual, like either supper time, or let's say a bedtime ritual, both for children and adults, they're going to
yes.
have symbols. Maybe it's a storybook that your 5-year-old wants to hear over and over and over again. And at supper time, maybe you have some pieces of dishware from your family of origin, things like that that are rich with meaning, and I think help us, quite frankly, just to be human with each other.
Mm,
And then the category of family traditions. Now, those are things like birthdays, anniversaries, special times on the calendar that are unique to your family. When it's your birthday, it's not everybody's birthday in the culture.
that's right.
Although I understand there is an island people, and I can't remember their name right now, unfortunately, where they all celebrate their birthday on January 1st.
Oh,
But
how
we don't do
interesting.
that. We have individual birthdays, and it is a day to help someone feel special and to mark developmental milestones, and so forth. Often we make a bigger deal about decade birthdays, 20, 30, 40, etc. And so that's a very important uh, kind of family tradition.
Anniversaries.
Anniversary. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Anniversaries.
Yeah, anniversaries, and that can be a wedding anniversary. It can be an anniversary of when you met someone who was very significant to you. It can be an anniversary of the start of a friendship. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wedding anniversary. So those are some examples of family traditions. They are unique to your calendar. They're not happening everywhere at the same time.
Right.
You have to put a little extra effort into them. Then, for instance, in the next category, family celebrations, which are the holidays primarily, and those are, depending on what religious group you belong to or ethnic group you belong to, those are specific times that happen on the calendar. If it's our regular calendar, or if it's a lunar calendar in the Jewish religion, or in the Muslim religion. Right now, yesterday, I believe Ramadan started,
Mm,
and it's an entire month where people fast all day, and then they get together for a big meal with friends and family in the evening. And so that's happening all over the place, anywhere where there is a Muslim population. Later this month, on our regular calendar, we'll have Easter, and it's at the end of March this year. Um, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and for some people, that's a very serious religious holiday. For others, it's just, I don't know what to call it, a fun holiday.
egg hunts.
Easter
Right.
eggs, Easter eggs for children, and chocolate rabbits, and
Right.
whatever the family's way of doing that particular holiday celebration.
Mhm.
In most years, Easter and the Jewish holiday of Passover fall right near each other within within the same week, within the same day. But because the Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, this happens to be a leap year. And instead of adding a day, the Hebrew calendar adds a month. So to straighten things out again. So Passover won't be till I think it's the third week of April
Oh,
this year.
wow. I didn't
So they're
realize
yeah,
that.
so they're quite far apart,
Mm.
and it's a wonderful holiday. I myself am Jewish, and we make a Seder meal with a booklet that we read from the Haggadah, and we don't eat bread for 8 days. We eat matzah, which tastes mostly like cardboard, but it's okay. You don't have to eat it, but you're not supposed to eat bread or
Right.
bread products. And so, as I say, normally those three holidays, Ramadan, Easter, and Passover, are very, very close. This year they're a little more spread out because of lunar calendars and our American calendar, whatever it's called. I don't know. So, but it is a period of time when people are gathering with family, um, or they may not be because there's a cutoff in the family. And that's something that comes to the attention of us as therapists, I think, especially as couple and family therapists,
Right.
where if people are not getting on with their family of origin, we work to try to help them mend those kinds of cutoffs.
Mhm.
And then the next category, the final category, is life cycle rituals. And those are the rituals that celebrate special moments in the family life cycle. So, weddings, birth of a child, um, graduation.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Again, if people are religious, they might be celebrating a communion, they
Mhm.
might be celebrating a bar mitzvah, um, and all of those things are wrapped up in life cycle rituals. So we created this way of um, categorizing really the rituals so that they would be simpler and more available to people to think about, and to think about what's missing in my life. Is there something I want to change?
Mm.
I think sometimes, for instance, when a couple gets together, creating new family rituals can be difficult. Perhaps in a heterosexual couple, he comes from a family that didn't do much celebrating, and she comes from one that did lots of celebrating. So they have a good deal of negotiating to do to figure out how are we going to do it.
That's right.
And yeah, and sometimes couples will start out with not much in the way of meaningful rituals. Maybe they still go back to their own families of origin. But once they have children, if they have children, is when it usually starts to become important to um, create long lasting family rituals.
Yeah. So, thank you so much for that breakdown of the types of rituals.
Sure.
And if you could share a little bit about why they're important, why is it significant? Because in the example that you gave, the guy could say, "Why do we have to do all these celebrations? What's the point? Such a waste
Yeah.
of money, time. Who cares? I'm not outgoing. I'm an introvert, right?"
Right.
So all the things. And so, why is it significant or important to have rituals?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. They really are the connective tissue in our family and community systems.
Right.
And, if you just try to imagine your life with no rituals, it's hard to imagine. I mean, you're going to have daily rituals, like it or not. You're going to eat a meal together. You're going to, put a child to bed and read a story and things like that. The bigger rituals, traditions, celebrations, life cycle rituals, often there has to be a good bit of negotiating in a couple because one comes from one kind of background, the other comes from another kind of background. Um, Lots of arguments certainly occur around different ritual seasons. Do we celebrate? Don't we? How do we? How
With
do we make it
whom?
our own? Which family do we go to if it's Christmas or Easter or
Mhm.
Passover? Passover, thankfully, there's 2 nights of Seder, so you can go to both. But it's
It's convenient.
yeah. So, and that's something that I will certainly hear in a therapy session,
Yep.
how people have struggled to work that out, what happens at key developmental points, like children leaving home and
Mhm.
setting up their own household. How does the ritual, let's say of Easter, that's what's coming, need to change? Does it need to change, or is the expectation that uh, adult children will always come back to their family of origin? Well, that's fine until they have a partner. And then there needs to be some negotiating as to, are we going to do one year and one the other? Or are we going to take 2 days and, visit here? And today, I'm sure you and your listeners know, so many people have moved far away from their families of origin.
Right.
So, though, certainly we always see on television for Christmas, for Easter, and so forth, big,
Thanksgiving.
big airport days, right? Big travel days, so big driving days where
Mhm.
people want to go and be with their families.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I know that rituals do and why I encourage clients to partake and to get better at them and better and make it more and more meaningful and special is because, and you could correct me if you have additional thoughts on this or reinforce what I'm saying. They have a way of transmitting family legacies as well
Yes,
and imparting the meaning of who we are
yes.
and create that cohesiveness in the family. So, any thoughts about that?
I think you're right. Of course, you always want to find out, let's say in a couple, what was a given ritual like in the family they came from?
Mhm.
Because sometimes one partner had a terrific experience with, let's just say, Christmas,
Mhm.
and the other had a terrible experience year after year after year. Yeah, I think in rituals for our times, I've talked about a family where when Christmas would come, the father would take to his bed
Mm.
and just would not come out.
Mm.
And, it was very hard on the mom and the kids, and they didn't understand it. And finally, he was able to speak about what happened to him as a child. That Christmas was a terrible time. He was in a family that was quite abusive, and on Christmas it was even worse because his father would not just get drunk, but roaring drunk, and would abuse him.
Right.
And so he took to hiding on holidays.
Mm. Yep.
And once his wife and his children understood his story,
Mm.
then they were able to figure out with him, how can we make this so that it's very different, that it doesn't bring back bad memories? And they worked on it and they created a new ritual for themselves. And so it's that kind of thing. I think it's important for all of us, excuse me,
Mhm.
to think about. what was a given ritual like in the family I come from? How was it celebrated? Was it celebrated?
Right.
Um, were people good to each other, or were they not good to each other? And then you can begin to work on how do you want this to be now and into the future.
Right. So that ties it back to what I said earlier that they could be healing, right? What a beautiful experience. If we have a
Yeah,
chance to now change it, have a different story around it, a different
that's right.
experience,
That's
that's
right.
lovely. Right. Very, very nice. And so when everything got upended during COVID, so
Yeah,
any thoughts about how rituals, I mean, we lived it, so we know, right, factually what happened and how we felt. But in
that's
terms
right.
of clinically and the experience and the healing and the trauma and how resilient we were at the end of the day, anything to say about that?
Well, one of the things that um, I guess it's both a blessing and a curse is Zoom, and that during COVID, people celebrated with each other by not they didn't see each other in person, but they were able to Zoom. And I remember Passover was the first
Yeah.
holiday after everything shut down for me, and for my family. And my children and grandchildren were living a couple of hours away, and so we set up Zoom and had a Seder. So, did it take a little bit of work? Yes, it did. Especially for those of us who are not that technologically,
Blind.
savvy.
Mhm.
Right. But there are ways, certainly. Now, I did do a scholarly paper called Rituals in the Time of COVID. It published in Family Process in 21, I think, or 22. I'm not
Me
sure.
too. I think I
But
read that one. Yep.
yeah, so your listeners are certainly invited to take a look for that paper. Um, I think it's one that they don't charge for. I
I'll
think,
link it. Yep. I was
yeah,
able to see it. So
yeah. So, because I was very interested in how were people maintaining, though changing, because you had to, the familiar rituals.
yeah.
I interviewed people, I talked to people, and all of the ones we mentioned earlier, Ramadan, Passover, Easter, were all occurring at that time. And you could not go out into a crowd, I mean, unless you really wanted to take a big chance. And so people remained at home and used the technology to connect to each other. So we're living in a different time, than when a lot of these were first created.
But that goes to show us how interesting. Let me say that again. That goes to show us how important rituals are to us
Yeah.
that we figure out the technology because Zoom was. I mean, it was like we did Zoom back then, but it wasn't what it is today.
No,
Right? The
that's
COVID
true.
definitely brought it up to like, ooh, we need Zoom.
Yeah.
And people figured it out, and people
Yeah.
sometimes will cancel family plans and not do holidays if there was a conflict or whatever, but they made sure there was a ritual during this time because they couldn't. They figured it out. They got over all the humps and hurdles,
That's
right?
right.
So that goes to show us that the impact that rituals have, how they create that the meaning and rich in the connection that helps us feel more connected and loved, right? Without them, it's like it feels like we're floating.
Yeah, I think you're
Right?
right.
So they kinda
Yeah,
ground
no,
us?
they anchor us. They anchor us with our family, with our
Right.
friends. Who are we?
Mhm.
What do we want to continue? What do we want to stop doing? All
Right,
of that
right.
is involved in rituals.
Mhm. How do we become our better selves, right? If our family's abusive, if our family's boring, if our family is whatever, gossipy, complaining, whining, over whatever, all the things that families do, right?
Yeah,
Excess eating, drinking, whatever, all the things. An opportunity to do them differently now and start changing the patterns, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Lovely, very nice. So, in terms of we talked about COVID being like a thing. What are more natural and organic things that are ongoing? COVID was pretty a big exception to life, something that we don't expect to have very often, hopefully.
Yeah,
Um,
hopefully.
but other things that happen more often are step families and multicultural families, right? And so, any thoughts on how to use rituals to create more unity and cohesiveness within families that might struggle with that because they come from such different backgrounds and there's so many moving pieces?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Let's start with step families, remarried families.
Yes.
Um, there needs to be conversation. You can't assume that your partner, your new partner, and his or her children have done things the way you and your ex partner
Right.
and your current children are doing things. And the worst thing you can do, I think, is force people
Yes.
to participate in something that just feels too foreign to them.
Mm.
So, in a remarried family, I think you have to find out. It's you're not starting from scratch because you have children usually,
Right.
and you have to have conversations so that um, his children, her children, maybe they have an our child together.
Mhm.
All of that has to go into what kind of rituals do we want to have, and if it's a holiday, to have a conversation. How did we used to do this?
Yes.
And it's going to take a while. It's not going to feel, automatically natural. And one of the things that can really get remarried families into trouble is um, each one insisting on it's got to be my way.
Mm,
Children not liking changes.
right.
So there needs to be a lot of conversation. And people don't think of that because some of these rituals feel so automatic to us. We've
Right.
done them for years, and this is how you do it, and it can
Right.
really get people into difficulties. So that's one category that you mentioned. The other, multi-ethnic, multi-religious couples and families
Mhm.
also have to find a way to make room for each one's way of doing things.
Perfect.
And I think that's it's hard for people, um, particularly if they're not sharing the same religious beliefs.
Mhm.
Hopefully, they've talked that through carefully before, making a commitment. These are important conversations. They're important conversations for first couples before they move in, get married. What are some of the big fights we hear about? Wedding planning, how it all got pulled off or didn't get pulled off, and so
Yep.
forth.
That's so funny that you said that because when my couples are getting married and they start having some difficulties, I'm like, this is what happens. It comes with the territory, right? It's totally normal.
That's right.
It just comes with it. You're negotiating a lot of different things, right? You're melding two families, two lives, two everything.
Yes,
That's not easy. So I love what you
exactly.
said with the multicultural aspect, the ethnicity, the religions, that to make space for both people's
Yeah,
thing, right? As
yeah,
opposed to my way, your way, or you have to give up yours, you do mine. Like that's just now a nice way of honoring your partner.
yeah. No,
It's
absolutely.
dishonoring.
And there's a richness in that comes from finding out as you get to know a new partner and you're thinking about making things more permanent, for instance. um what's the history?
Right.
what how has their family done any of these big rituals? How do they want to do it?
What's the
And
meaning behind them? Why is it
yes,
important? How does it play out? How does it fit into your belief systems and all
exactly,
your things?
exactly.
I love all of that. That's perfect. So you mentioned conversations a couple of times. And any suggestions on key things to cover to make sure that they have a good conversation as opposed to they start talking about something and then it's a fight? We're
Right,
saying
right.
conversation, not fighting, right?
Yes. In terms of planning a ritual, you mean? Or
Yeah, and just kind of
yeah,
integrating, creating just togetherness, right, with all these
yeah.
things.
I think the first thing is people do need some awareness that there's going to be difference. We're each, even if we're the same religion, same ethnic background, and so
Right.
forth, we come from two different families. And the way your family did things and the way my family did things are going to be at least slightly different.
Right.
Okay. Um, the only time I think maybe this is less true is when both people come from a very um, oh, what's the word? Um,
Orthodox.
a very orthodox kind of religion, and they both
Mhm.
share that. That's probably going to have more similar rituals, at least the holidays and
Right.
life cycle rituals.
Mhm.
Now, things like daily rituals, however, are probably always going to have been different for each. How do people start the day? How do they say
Mm.
goodbye to each other in the morning? Do they? Do they notice that each one's leaving or
Right.
one's leaving? How do they greet each other at the end of the day? Again, do they? Or people
Mhm.
just slip into the house and no one knows who's there?
Mhm.
Um, and meal times and bedtimes and so forth. Those are perhaps more likely to be quite different coming from different families. So it's a good thing to have a conversation about it. How did your family do? Tell me about a typical day in the family that you come from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. And then you'll get a take on what their daily rituals are like.
Right.
Are they having daily rituals? I mean, there I see so many couples, younger couples, that
Mm.
work. They don't get home till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. He goes to the pile of mail. She goes to the computer. They don't sit down to eat or to discuss how was your day. And I think that is not good.
I
Okay,
just got chills,
I'll
Evan.
make a judgment there.
Yeah.
If you're away from each other for hours and hours and hours, you need a way to greet each other at the end of the day that is reliable and repeatable. And
Beautiful.
you probably need to share a little food or a glass of wine
Mhm.
in order to reconnect.
Right.
So saying goodbye in the morning and then saying hello again when you re-meet each other, those are important. And they're
Love it.
really important for children.
Excellent.
I
Yes.
think, yeah, I think children thrive on the regularity, the repeatedness that they can rely on um, in daily rituals, most
Right. So that's
definitely.
another aspect of the also the benefit of rituals. It creates
Yeah,
that emotional safety that like I know what's happening. I know where I belong. I know I'm going to be treated. I know what's expected. All of that stuff creates a lot of good stuff, right?
exactly.
Lovely, so
Exactly.
good. And as you were saying through, as you were going through the touch points throughout the day, I'm hearing transitions in there, right?
You're
Some
hearing, I'm sorry, some,
transitions.
yes,
Transition
yes,
times are massive, right? And that's why you usually things break down during transition times. That is something that I usually call out.
yeah, yes.
Friday
And,
night, Monday morning.
if one parent is not working outside the home, then they're there to create some kind of daily ritual with children when they return from school.
Totally.
And that's a good thing.
Or even if they do work, because most people work, even if they do work when they reconnect, right after daycare,
That's
or
right.
when they
That's right.
reentry the home, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. And
Um,
that there's a repetition, a familiarity.
Right.
children thrive on that.
That's
They
right.
absolutely do.
Yeah. And adults do also, right? So something that I usually point out to couples is be very intentional about the transitions into the weekend, out of the weekend, before
That's good.
vacation, after vacation, right?
Yeah.
Nighttime, morning, like getting home, leaving the home, getting into the home, like all those touch points get tricky for people. And that's where
Yes.
people get triggered and things happen. And so
Yes.
if they could integrate some kind of a good ritual there, bam, right?
Right.
Perfect. Very, very nice.
Absolutely.
So, Evan, can you share some lights onto what makes a good ritual? So, you already mentioned consistency and frequency. I think you said frequency, but consistency definitely. Um, what else? What are some other elements of a good ritual?
I think the participation of, if it's a couple, both members of the couple, talking about how did this particular ritual go in the families we come from? Okay. How do we want it to be? How can we remain open to changing a ritual in changing circumstances?
Hmm.
So somebody needs to work longer, somebody gets ill, all of the things that happen in life. Um, how do we integrate that into a given ritual, whether that's a daily ritual, a family tradition, a family celebration? They're not going to look the same on year 10 as they did on year 1. At least we hope not. Um, and that can get couples into arguments and so forth, but there needs to be flexibility. What's working for us, what worked for us when we were a childless couple is not going to work the same for us when we have children. And what worked for us when our children were preschoolers is certainly not going to work for us when they are teenagers.
That's right.
And so I think if families can keep that in mind and adjust their rituals, they may need to deal, I'm sure they will need to deal with a loss.
Hmm.
And how do we integrate that into our rituals? If we always went to grandma's house for, let's say, Easter, which is coming up, and we've lost grandma,
Right.
what are we going to do?
Right.
Some families, unfortunately, just stop celebrating,
Mm,
and that's not a good solution.
right.
It's going to be different. It requires conversation. How can we do this in a good way, in a way that honors grandma, but
Mm,
moves us on as well? And the same
beautiful.
thing with the developmental stages of children. You
Hmm.
know, that the rituals that you may be doing when your kids are 5, 6, 7, and the rituals, what are those rituals going to require when that same child is 16
Hmm.
or going off to college,
Hmm.
and so forth? So I guess my message is stay flexible,
I love
stay
it.
open, um, read, talk to other people. How do they do their particular, whatever particular ritual it is? It's going to be different than what you've been doing. And perhaps then you can get some new ideas.
I love it. And I think that leads us into my last question for the day. That leads us into the
Okay.
last question, right? So, which is what makes a ritual meaningful?
What makes it meaningful? Well, that's a very good question.
Hmm.
Um, you do want to examine and re examine your rituals. If they start to feel repetitive, without meaning, like you're going through the motions, it's time to
Like
talk.
flat.
Yeah, it's time to talk. You may need to discard it. You may need to just change it up in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes, a quote good ritual is meaning, is each participant feeling like they want to be there, uh, that there's room for multiple voices to alter a ritual, to change something, to talk about maintaining something because it's very important the way it is. And
Mm,
so I would encourage couples and families to have discussions ahead of especially the major holiday rituals.
yes.
Okay, so we've been coloring Easter eggs for the last 15 years. Do we still want to do that? Or
Right.
do we want to do something different? And get everybody's voice involved. And
Excellent.
then you'll know that you're creating something meaningful.
Lovely. So that's the great definition of that. Creating meaning means that everybody has a voice, that everybody's contributing. That's what makes it meaningful.
Yeah.
So, but what if somebody doesn't want to participate? What if you have a couple and one partner, like we were saying earlier, is really into it and the other one isn't? Right. So then how can we go
Yeah,
about
that's a very
inviting the
good
partner?
question.
Right. So,
I think you want to review with each other what were rituals like in the family I come from.
mhm,
So again, let's take this time of year. What was Easter like in the family that I come from? And if it was a good experience, then often you want to keep it going. You want to repeat it in your new family and so forth. If it was not a good experience, and there are families where, if there's alcoholism, if there's drug abuse, if there's other things, there many times people take a holiday as a time not just to get drunk, but to get roaring drunk.
mhm,
And your partner may have terrible, terrible memories of that from childhood that you don't even know about. So, I mean, I think my advice on this would be when you're getting to know someone, when you're seriously dating, talk about family rituals. Talk about what was mealtime, supper time like in your family. Here's what it was like in my family.
mm,
Um, what, how were birthdays celebrated? Were they? There's a lot of families that once a kid is past 10 years old or something, they just stop celebrating.
hmm.
There are others who make it a big deal and an important matter forever. Okay. Um,
Yep.
Holidays. How did your family do Easter? Here's how my family did Easter. What do we want to do? So that you don't get caught in these needless arguments that you
Right.
don't even know where it's coming from.
Right.
When one partner is saying, "No, this isn't right. We're not doing this right." What do you mean, right? What's
Mm,
right? Well, what's right is how my family did it. And
that's right.
so, if you can have those conversations, and if you're going to one person's family of origin, um, you need to kind of put your way of doing it to the side for a day. And it's a great way to learn about how your partner it was brought up and is doing things.
Right.
To have these opportunities to have a holiday meal with one family or the other. I'm sure you know from your practice, and I'm sure your listeners know, there can be endless arguments about what's the right way to do this. That's not how my family did it. Well, you're creating a new family. And so you
Excellent.
need to talk it over. How did each of you do it? What did you love about it? What did you quite frankly hate about it and wish would never happen again?
Right.
And then you are on the road to creating a good set of rituals for yourself.
I love it. That was amazing. Perfect. So if one partner is not interested, I love what you were saying to there might be a reason for it, right? So to
Yes.
be curious and
Yeah. No,
and compassionate.
yeah, we have always found that if somebody says, "I don't celebrate," what do you mean you don't celebrate?
Right.
What were celebrations like in the family you come from?
Right.
And you start to hear
Yeah.
some pretty awful stories sometimes,
That's
and
right.
that someone's solution is, I'm not gonna celebrate. That's the easiest
Right.
way out of this. And so you have to work on it with people and let them know there are other ways than the way their family might have done a particular ritual.
Beautiful. Perfect. So I heard the takeaway and the last parting words were stay open and flexible. So I love that. I'm gonna quote you on
Yes.
that. Very good, Amber.
Yes,
Even
and I wanna wish everybody a happy Ramadan if you're celebrating that, happy Easter, happy Passover, work on your rituals together.
I love it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing time with me today. I
Thank you.
really appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you've contributed to the profession and for just having a beautiful life. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye,
And to the
everybody.
listeners, I'll see you at the next one. Bye.